Hello and welcome to this pronunciation video all about vowels. So vowels are these A-E-I-O-U, and English is a bit of a nightmare when it comes to pronunciation. And so what this series starts off with is vowels, looking at the different ways in which pronunciation of vowels can confuse and trip up learners. Now, rather than doing my ugly mug on the whole thing, I've done it as a PowerPoint presentation, which I think is more suitable to learn from rather than having a typical YouTube video that changes pictures and backgrounds every second or two. That's a distraction, I think, that is not necessary to learn properly. So we'll have a look at the presentation in a minute. Then afterwards, this is weird. You do the presentation, you think you've covered everything, and then you start thinking about it, realize, I forgot this word, forgot that word, forgot this word. So what I've done is at the end of the presentation, we'll come back and I'll look at those words that I sort of forgot, and we'll just look at the pronunciation of those. Anyway, without further ado, here's the presentation. So here's the presentation on vowels. So again, we'll look at vowel pronunciation problems, and the basic trouble seems to be is that your eyes and your ears don't really align up very well. What you see and what you hear just don't seem to match up. And this is primarily because English has borrowed from many languages and has many influences, and these are primarily, in no particular order, Latin, Greek, German, French, and other. And other can be anything. So as we say, English vowels are a bit like cats. You know, they hear the rules, but they don't care. They do their own thing. Then we have, first one we want to look at is the sort of ed at the end of a word. And this is the way we make past tenses of regular verbs. It's just add ed, or just a d if it's already ending in e. And when we speak these, they don't actually sound like an ed. They sound more like a d or even a t, as we'll see in these examples. So we have played and worked. So that again, played and worked. Again, I hope you can hear the difference. But there are some words where it's fully spoken, so this last syllable. For example, wicked and beloved. So why these are different, I'm sure there's a reason. I personally don't know what it is. Let me know in the comments if you know. I'll be interested to learn. Then we have silent vowels. And it's not just the vowels, we also have other letters, but that's subject for a different lesson, which are written, but they're not pronounced. And they often appear in sort of really everyday words, and having them there can make pronunciation difficult to guess just by looking at the spelling alone. Now, as a learner, you might try and read all the letters, but the native speakers, they just skip over them and generally make the words sound shorter or simpler than you maybe think they should sound. So let's have a look at some examples. This one is not pronounced vegetable. It's pronounced vegetable. So the ET in the middle, you can almost replace with a D and say vegetable. This one is not comfortable. It's comfortable. So the OR in the middle, you almost just ignore it. Comfortable. Now here, you might be tempted to say parliament, but the I is just completely ignored in this word. We just say parliament. This one is something I hear very often, and there's a temptation that people would like to say clothes, but it's not. It's clothes. Now, this is a bit difficult to say because of the tongue positioning. With the TH, you have the sort of tongue behind the teeth, but then you wanted a way to make the S sound. And you've got to just be quick with the tongue, I'm afraid. So instead of clothes, it's clothes. And here's another one where we basically ignore half the letters. Sounds like French, doesn't it? And we don't say jewellery, we say jewelry. Okay? Jewelry. And this one is probably one you know. It's not business, but just business. Okay, the middle I is just ignored, and the U is pronounced like an I. We just get business. And the next one is, it's not camera. We actually have two changes here. We just ignore the E in the middle, and we make the A at the end a sort of a sound, this schwa. So camera. And a lot of people might be tempted to pronounce this chocolate, but it's not. It's just chocolate, one of the main 5 food groups. And here we have the last one. It's not average, but average. So we do several things here that are weird. We ignore the E in the middle, and the I, we kind of turn that, the A, we turn that into like an I, and we say average. Again, very strange, but that's the way it is. Now, the letter A, when we have sort of more than one appearing in a word, they're not all pronounced the same, and this can really cause problems. And often it's the second one that is the non-straightforward one. And if we have sort of the second A in the word is often sort of unstressed or lazy, and we end up with this sort of schwa sound, or like a. And I did say we wouldn't get into phonetics, and this is the only one, I promise you. But this schwa comes up quite a lot, and it's just sort of like a lazy sound. Now, as a learner, you might sort of be trying to pronounce the vowels fully or with the wrong stress, and this, of course, could lead to mispronunciations, which we want to avoid. So let's look at some examples. Banana. So in this case, the second A is actually not the problem. It's the ones before it and after it. So don't say banana, you say banana. And again, parade. The second A is actually following the rules this time. So we say with this type of vowel consonant E, that the E makes the other vowel say its name. So it's parade, aid, parade. But the first one we say p, sort of parade. Camera we had in another example. So it's the second one here, camera. And papaya. It's a bit like parade, but it's again, doesn't really follow the rules on any of them. So it's papaya. Now the two weak ones at the beginning and the end, and the second one sounded more like an I than an A. We have Panama. So the first A is right, Panama. Now here's one we just stolen straight from another language. I believe it's Spanish. We say guacamole. Guacamole. And parasol. The second A is this sort of sound. We're going to say parasol, but parasol. And we do the same thing with the letter E. Sometimes the letter E is pronounced in an unusual way. And again, it's because of English has many different sort of origins and different languages, and they've all been held and retained as in some part of the language. And over the centuries, this has all evolved into one hodgepodge that we lovingly call English. And this means that often you can't just pronounce the letters as they appear, but you really have to learn each word individually, as these examples show. Pretty. The E is pronounced more like an I. Pretty. Not pretty, but pretty. Here we have several. So the second E is more this sort of sound, a very lazy sort of sound. Several. Sometimes you can even ignore it completely. People will say several as well, not several. So we have revel. The second E is a sort of sound, revel. And energy. Again, it's not energy, but energy. So it's this sort of lazy sound. Now, strangely enough, the letter I generally tends to behave itself. So we have this sort of short sound like bit and sit and milk, or we have this long sound like bite and sight. And here we see what we mentioned earlier, with the E at the end makes the vowel before it say its name. So bite, sight is the letter I. But we do have a few exceptions for the letter I that I could think of. So family generally gets sort of ignored. Animal, it's not animal or animal, but animal is this lazy again. And lastly, this one, if we look at the rule that the E makes the vowel in front of it say its name, it should be machine, but it's not, it's machine. So it's completely separate pronunciation on its own. Then we do the same thing with O and U. Now we put them sort of together because they all have a sort of a similar situation. It's a letter O, but it's this sort of sound that we come to know and love. We also have some really weird ones in here, like kernel, rough and tough, which absolutely follow no normal patterns. And again, this is confusing if you expect something regular. In fact, the OUGH is a special case in itself, and this is worthy of its own lesson, which we will have later. There'll be a whole lesson just on OUGH, and it's a doozy. So look at some examples with O. Again, we have this where it's not an O sound, but this sort of lazy schwa sound. So word, world, work. If you take like fork, as opposed to, that would be the proper O sound, but work doesn't sound like fork. Then we have woman, not woman, but woman. So they're both this sort of lazy sound. And if we take the plural, we change it completely and we make that women, not women, but women. They both sound like an I. I don't know who invented this. They deserve a slap. Now, a lot of words like OLF, like golf, they're quite regular, but wolf isn't. It's more like a U. And then we have things like similar examples like honey, money. They sound more like a U than an O, as does love and stomach. Now, this next word is weird for several reasons. Firstly, we completely ignore the L, and we turn the O into this sort of sound. So that's actually pronounced salmon. Okay? Salmon. And then lastly, we have I think one of the weirdest pronunciation of all. It's not colonel, kernel. But how you make kernel from this is a really classic example of how dumb English pronunciation can be. And we do the same thing with some U. Now here we have the same word that can be a noun or an adjective. And in the noun form, we say minute, so the U is pronounced like an I, and the E is ignored, so minute. And the stress is on the first, minute. And as an adjective, it's minute. Now, I don't know if you caught that, but very often in English, when we have a letter U, we it almost sounds like there's half a Y in front of it. We don't say minute, but minute. I don't know if you can hear the Y sort of trying to make an appearance there. Now, these are actually examples of so-called heteronyms, and I have a whole video on just this topic, which, if I remember to, I'll link in the video description. So, minute and minute. Here's another one where this kind of Y tries to sort of creep in, we say duty. Not duty, but duty. Now, in this case, we just make the U sound like an I, so it's busy. This looks like it should be similar, but it's berry, as in berry, strawberry, blackberry, although they're pronounced strawberry, blackberry, but berry as in that. And last one, I think we might have had this before, business, where we ignore the middle I and make the U sound like an I, as in busy, business. Now the last example, this is more meant for entertainment to show you how incredibly frustrating English can be. I'll give you a list of words, and as it says here, one of these is not like the others. Now I'm not going to say them because you'll know which one it is. So if you want to pause the video and have a look, that would be a good time to do it. And we see we have these words. They all look like they should rhyme, but they don't. And you know which one the odd one out is? This one. It's not pronounced "su." I hear this many times, especially with German speakers. They want to call this "su" and actually get taught this at school, which is very bad. It isn't. It's not pronounced "su." It's pronounced the same as so and so. So these three words, S-E-W, S-O, and S-O-W, are pronounced so. And this is important to know. But depending on the context, it's only called so if we're talking about putting seeds in the ground. If we're talking about a female pig, it rhymes with cow and it's pronounced sow. I'm fairly sure this has come from a Germanic origin. But yes, it's confusing, and I apologize. Please don't shoot me. I'm just a messenger here. But this is an example of how incredibly confusing and frustrating English pronunciation can be. But the desire to learn it and to improve it is yours. So I wish you well with it. So I hope we did find that presentation informative and interesting, and I'm sure there were a few things there that you weren't aware of. And here are the ones that I promised at the beginning that I forgot, and are epitome, vehicle, choir, bouquet, stir, syrup, and recipe. Don't know why I forgot those, but under old age. Anyway, now you know about vowels. Please ask questions and see you in the next one. Bye for now.